Who was the greatest comedian in the Bible? Samson. He brought down the house. A little girl became restless as the preacher's sermon dragged on and on and on. Finally, she leaned over to her mom and said in a whisper, "Mommy, if you give him money now, will he let us go?" Welcome to Holy Humour Sunday at Walton. It's a yearly tradition, and there are many other churches across the country celebrating Holy Humour Sunday on the Sunday after Easter. It's the idea of setting aside one Sunday each year to celebrate God's gift of laughter and joy. I think we do try to do that more than one Sunday, but maybe not as intentionally. This Sunday has a rich tradition. It's also called Laughter Sunday, Hilarity Sunday, God's Laughter Sunday, Holy Fools Sunday, and as was mentioned earlier, Bright Sunday. It started in the 15th century in Bavaria. The Sunday after Easter was God's joke, or the Easter laugh. Stories were added to the services, to the messages, to the homilies, and people played practical jokes on each other. It was a way of celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ, the supreme joke God played on Satan by raising Jesus from the dead. In the Orthodox tradition, too, people would gather on Easter Monday and tell funny jokes and dance and eat. This was revived in North America in 1988 by the Fellowship of Merry Christians. So far and wide, people are invited to celebrate the gift of laughter that God gave us. Much I read in the wider church and across denominations seems to be doom and gloom. There's too much wrestling and struggling. If you were not down before you read the statements, you were afterwards. So I think that we need to laugh and smile and appreciate the joy in life. Every generation has had its problems. Every day has had its crisis. Every time has been troubled by this or that. Jesus said in John 16:33. Now, I usually quote the words of the New International Version or the New Revised Standard Version, but I think the King James Version has the best translation. Jesus says, "These things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace." Jesus says, "In the world you shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." Note, be of good cheer. Maybe that sums up best of all this Sunday. As one person has said, every evening I turn my worries over to God. He's going to be up all night anyway. Think about it. Clever but true. We do not need to be on 24/7. Turn it over to God. God's on 24/7. April has its National Volunteer Week, April 14th to 20th. And no joke, Walton, here we're blessed by the best volunteers. And we've just seen some of them stand up a few minutes ago when we've acknowledged the volunteers and the council and the committees. But there are many, many more. Your Holiness, a cardinal gasped as he ran into the Pope's office. Jesus just rode into the Vatican on a donkey. What are we to do? The Pope looked up from his work and replied, "Look busy?" At Walton, we never need to look busy. People give above and beyond in time and talent and treasure throughout the year. Just think, to have this service today, there are volunteer ushers, video recorders, easy worship operators, rides drivers, Sunday school teachers, youth group teachers, coffee hosts, Bible readings, welcome center greeter, instrumentalists, and members of the choir. Even the elevator operators who literally give you a lift no matter if it's Holy Humour Sunday or not. All these volunteers, and I'm sure I've missed some, but that's for one service on a Sunday morning. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We talk about blessings. Did you hear about the church that put in their bulletin announcement that the blessing of the pets will be followed by a hot dog lunch? We currently have a Bible study running on Thursdays on Peter, one of the major participants in the gospel accounts of the Easter resurrection of Jesus from the dead. Did you hear about the owner of a new bed and breakfast here in Bronte? He wanted to name his 3 available rooms for rent as a B&B after the Gospels. Not knowing which names to pick, he decided he'd name the rooms Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Now he thought to himself, if only I could come up with a name for the bathroom. What about the local minister here in Halton? The church he's at he has a reputation of extremely long and lengthy sermons. On Easter Sunday, last Sunday, he noticed a man get up and leave during the middle of his resurrection message. The man returned before the end of the service. Afterwards, the pastor asked the man where he'd gone. The man replied, "I went to get a haircut." The pastor said, "Why didn't you do that before the service?" The gentleman answered, "I didn't need one then." So we can laugh as believers. God created us with a funny bone. Think of the smile of a young baby. Doesn't that just melt you? Think about when they giggle. And it can be what we might think over the simplest things, but it just changes us. Michigan State University tells us it really does take more muscles to frown. It takes about 47 of them. And for smiling, we only use 13. So it's true. Smile. On Easter Sunday, I spoke about the 500 people. The 500 people that Paul the Apostle tells us who saw the resurrected Jesus all at one time. In that sermon last week, I used baseball analogies to explain the 500 level of the Rogers Center. Another pastor in this area is a real baseball nut. His name's Reverend Oscar, and he likes to explain the Holy Trinity to his congregation as the world's greatest unassisted triple play. A clever phrase that can bring a smile but the humor gets across an effective way to discuss and describe the mystery of God. Michaela was baptized in the name of God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, just as Jesus taught us to do. Well, do we have a couple more minutes for a couple more? Okay. A Sunday school teacher asked his class, does anyone know what we mean by the sins of omission? One of the girls replied, aren't those sins the ones we haven't committed yet? Nine-year-old Antonio wrote a letter to God. Dear God, I know why Noah did not take any pets on the ark. Because it was already raining cats and dogs. Finally, Libby was so happy with her report card, she let everyone know about it by singing Amazing Grades. I'll leave you with that, groaner. But it is God's amazing grace, isn't it? God's amazing grace that we can smile, we can laugh. It is a gift. Let us thank God today for it.